Chapter 5, Interlude, The Light Only You Can See. Kris Dreemurr had been screaming for so long now, and still not a soul alive could hear them. They had watched in helpless horror as the player, their name for the being controlling them, because of how it seemed to treat their life as little more than a game for its amusement, menaced Noelle with a knife. While the players seemed to know everything Kris knew, they had no special insight into its thought process, and so they were as shocked by its actions as Noelle was. My actions, Kris corrected himself. The will that yanked their body around like a puppet was not theirs, but with no way to communicate that fact. As far as everyone else was concerned, those choices were Kris's. And so they had watched from the sunken dark void that the player had submerged their mind in, their heart breaking at the sound of frightened panic and betrayal in Noelle's voice. They had screamed and raged and ordered the player to drop the knife with every ounce of willpower they possessed, but none of it had made any difference. All they could do was watch and pray for her safety. They're not really going to hurt her, right? Right? It was unbearable, and even the reveal that the blade had been dull did little to reassure them. They knew something from their biology textbooks that Noelle must have forgotten. Even a dull knife, hell, even a plastic one for that matter, could be a deadly weapon against monsters' weaker, magic-based physiology, if it was wielded by a determined attacker with the intent to kill. This time, at least, the player's intent didn't seem to have been lethal. But what about the next time, or the time after that? It clearly wanted Noelle for something, was grooming her for some purpose. But what would happen if a day came when she was no longer needed? A being that would make an innocent like Noelle kill so casually, that could command and manipulate and threaten without remorse, would surely have no hesitation about discarding her if she ever outlived her usefulness. Every time the player showed Noelle kindness, Kris was there, silently begging her not to trust it. They wanted to tell her that it wasn't them putting her through this, that they would never hurt her. They wanted to tell her that none of it was her fault. They wanted to tell her what it had made them do with Birdley, and where they had been going when they snuck out of their room at night, and what they now knew about Des. They'd almost gotten their chance. There had been that moment, all too brief, when Noelle had lashed out with her ice glass, and the shock had dislodged the player's hold on them. For a moment, they had been themselves again, but the moment had been full of pain and fear and panic, and they hadn't had time to make Noelle understand. She had healed their body, and they were grateful, but as the pain receded, the player had rushed back in to push Kris down once more into that helpless state of limbo. But the incident had given them a spark of hope. They knew now that it was possible to take back control, even if only temporarily. It hadn't been like that night a few days ago, when they had succeeded in ripping their possessed soul out of their chest. That had done more harm than good, because they'd found that being without their soul for more than a few minutes left them so weak they could hardly move. But in that clearing in the woods, their soul had stayed inside them, only free, untainted, part of Kris and Kris alone, the way it was supposed to be. They had to believe they would get another chance like that, a chance to tell someone what was really going on. And then maybe Noelle, or Susie, or someone else could help them find a way to get their soul back for good. Kris just had to wait and hope, and pray that no one else would get hurt before they could put things right. End of chapter.
Up next, Chapter 6, Group Projects.